Hello. Uh, can you, what are you basically like?
Good question.
Yeah.
Professionally, I guess I am a spiritual counselor, psychic medium,
Mm-hmm.
predominantly work as an energy healer, but I specialize in old souls and narcissistic abuse.
Mm-hmm. So what do you mean by a psychic medium? Like, why do you identify yourself as a psychic medium? If you look into the outside, there are people, they are maybe psychologically or their psyche is more advanced than that of the um, common human beings, or maybe they are they are less than that of the psychic medium, or maybe they are not a medium at all. So how do you identify yourself as a medium?
Well, in my own teachings, I was taught that somebody who, basically anyone could be psychic. We all have psychic abilities. Our clairs connect us to our psychic gifts.
Mhm.
And there are people that believe that every single person on this planet is psychic or has the ability to be. And then
Mhm.
there are people that believe that many people have the ability to be a medium, and yet not everybody can. I personally feel that to be a psychic medium, you have the ability to read people, read their energy. Uh, in some cases, there's variances on predictions. I think that's
Mhm.
changed a lot with a lot of the energies that have changed on this planet. And a
Mhm.
lot of astrologists have been able to point to that as well. And then mediumship is the ability to communicate with another side. So
Mhm.
on the astral plane, people that have passed, and and in some cases mediumship can be considered, on this plane. So like for example, I often hear inner thoughts.
Mhm.
So I can serve as a medium, especially to children for their parents, because a lot of children's inner thoughts are much easier to explain than the spoken word because their verbal communication is not up to the adult level yet. So that is my understanding of psychic mediumship. And I know there are people that have different definitions and different explanations, especially based on where you're at. Like I'm in the US and that's my understanding. But I've had people in the UK, for example, to say you're either a psychic or you're a medium. So I really believe it's a matter of what you personally connect with.
How does the like whether if you, for example, I am from India and you are from US, how does the land will define the psychic ability?
How does what with the psychic ability?
How does the land, I mean, the place where they are into, is
Well,
it
I
something
look at
like that?
psychic ability. I look at psychic ability as just your ability to, like for me, it's reading energy. It's
Mm-hmm.
reading somebody's, like their field, their aura, their chakras. And, but some people will look at psychics differently, like a psychic that will predict all aspects of the future. And I
Mm-hmm.
believe we've gotten very far away from that because there's so many different parallels and paths. And because of that, prediction-based psychic work is very different now than I believe it was, 10, 20 years ago.
So basically, I do prediction. Like I read the tarot cards and also I read the Vedic astrology. So basically,
Mhm.
what I do is like I look into the there. It's actually classified and it's actually it's a branch of science. If we study that, we can actually increase the ability of mind and soul, or anything that sort, and based on that we could actually go for these kind of predictions and things like that. So when we are looking into this consideration, how do you classify the peoples, those who are 20 years ago with now, what is the difference there?
Well, I feel that for one, I agree with you as far as, especially when it relates to astrology. I
Mm-hmm.
believe astrology is one of the best ways to work with predictions.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'm talking more about individuals
Mm-hmm.
and our free will and our paths. I don't believe it's as clear cut as it was
Mm-hmm.
once, meaning and it doesn't mean we didn't always have free will. We always have. But I believe so many people have, stepped into this awakening process and they're changing their realities and they're changing their futures and they're changing their past even based on how they are shifting. But regardless of how they're shifting, I believe it can be done in all different ways. But it really is coming down to these conscious acts they're making that is very different than it used to be. People would just kind of live life and it was common to, just for example, to complain if you have a bad day or a bad interaction. And I believe that's shifted so much now where people are becoming much more aware of their words and how they're talking about things in order to change their experiences, shift their experiences to more of a learning based aspect. And I just don't feel that was the case even 10 years ago, and especially not 20 years ago. But that's my personal experience and just with people around me. It's not to suggest that that's exactly how it is for every single person.
So if you look into nowadays, most of the peoples are in the terms of spirituality, they are talking about the 3D, 4D, 5D stuff, and funneling through different portals, and maybe the past lives could be the another dimensions which they are existing, and maybe even the aliens also could be from the different dimensions that are coming to this particular dimensions which we are living into. So what do you think about all these things? How do you feel about all this stuff, with your energy?
Well, for one, I think it's pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And I also believe that we're only going to understand so much. I believe that the human brain can only understand
Mm-hmm.
a bit of what is going on. And as great as that is, I think I'm more excited for learning more beyond, like beyond this lifetime. And really, I don't even think it's a matter of learning, but so much as remembering. I feel
Mm-hmm.
we are so dumbed down and, but at the same time, we're living a human experience and we're meant to do that. We've chosen to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe we do have an aspect of control, but not as much as many of us wish to have in
Mm-hmm.
that regard. And, the more we could just release and surrender to the process, I think the easier we make it for ourselves. But it has been very interesting, I can say, and I think it will continue to get more interesting as time goes on.
So how do you feel about that? As you said, you are a medium. Would you be able to sense these kind of dimensions or anything that sort?
I would say probably yes, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
think I'm always aware of it, especially if it's unknown to me, meaning that if something is presented to me and I feel something coming, I feel something shifting,
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel I can always explain what it is more so than just understand something's changing, something's
Mm-hmm.
shifting, something has entered or exited. I think there's variances, and I think it, again, will be based on the individual, but uh, even just little things like when we hear like ringing in our ears, it is supposedly us getting downloads, right? And things like that happening for us, things happening in our dreams that are making us more aware of these aspects. So I think, again, I feel it's pretty amazing. And I think I just think continuing to stay open
Mm-hmm.
and I think in the best way possible. I think a lot of us are skeptical to a degree, so it's kind of keeping it as a healthy dose of skepticism. I think is
Mm-hmm.
good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. here, then what would be like, as a normal person also will not be able to okay, let's come into this way. Like, when you are a medium is something, a channel which has been doing into the manifesting into this physical dimension. So, like, that is what my understanding. So, what do you channelize when you are a medium?
For me, I more connect to when I have a client, for example, I
Mm-hmm.
will connect to them first and
Mm-hmm.
then ask
Mm-hmm.
for whoever has a message for them to come forward. And
Mm-hmm.
whoever does come forward is usually the person that has the message they need at that time. It isn't necessarily always the one they want to see, because I think we often have the one person we really are hoping to hear from.
Mm-hmm.
And again, always believe spirit knows best, and it's just trusting who comes and who has that message and what that message is for. And it's more about that, just kind of delivering the message because it's not up to me to interpret. It's really just up to me to, again, serve as a medium.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't do that in most of my work. Like mediumship is not my primary work. I think it's great. I think it's incredible. It is not the thing I do. I would say my mediumship right now is probably 10% of my work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Then what is the 90 percentage the work you do?
Energy healing.
How does it work?
I will work with somebody on their traumas because
Mm-hmm.
anyone that comes to me has had probably pretty severe trauma,
Mm-hmm.
childhood trauma, narcissistic abuse, and that affects somebody's energy. It affects their chakra system, it affects their aura,
Mm-hmm.
and they will oftentimes be symptomatic,
Mm-hmm.
where it's manifested into their health, and
Mm-hmm.
in other times it does not. But I am able to read their energy to tell
Mm-hmm.
them what is coming forward most. So much like
Mm-hmm.
medium, whatever comes most forward, that's what we are meant to focus on. And I help them understand one, what's going on, where it's come from.
Mm-hmm.
And we also try and find what's connected to it. Is it a person? Is it a bottom belief? Is it just an experience? It again will vary by individual. And then working on healing that. So in some cases, it can be just a visual meditation. It can be some EFT exercises. It could be just individual chakra exercises. It, again, will very much depend on the individual. And I will receive messages on what will help that person
Mm-hmm.
at that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is this why would you like to call this as a spiritual healing, or this is a psychological stuff? Is that what you're trying to?
It's probably a mix of both. I would call it spiritual healing because in
Mm-hmm.
the US, in order to do any kind of psychological therapeutic healing,
Mm-hmm.
there's licensing required, and I do not have that, and I do not make claims to have that type of background, and
Mm-hmm.
even have to put the disclaimer of that I am not a medical professional, and you know that's
Mm-hmm.
not my aspect of my profession. However, there are many aspects of psychology that do play into what is
Mm-hmm.
going on with us, and I'm able to read it spiritually and also connect the psychology to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, is that a bypassing or
Is it a bi person?
a bypassing? I'm asking.
Oh, bypassing. I wouldn't like to call it a bypass because I feel like that's almost that's being inauthentic, right?
Mhm,
To bypass or find a loophole, and that's not what I want to do. I
mhm,
feel that it's so important to be authentic,
mhm,
and to be authentic is one to be honest. So
mhm,
if I felt called to go into psychology, I certainly would have done that.
mhm,
Uh, and there is a statistic, I don't know exactly what it is, but just a high percentage of people that have
mhm,
had very difficult life's experiences often become go into the field of psychiatry, psychology. I
Mm-hmm.
even have some clients who are
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
therapists, who are licensed
Mm-hmm.
psychiatrists.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it has that we find each other for reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't try to be them and they don't try to be me. I feel like it's a matter of finding what works for us. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and truthfully, I started doing this because I understand narcissism really well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm able to help people heal from something that is incredibly difficult to heal from.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Narcissist ideologies, if I'm not wrong, like, I've been into, about the rainbow gathering. This is a hippie gathering which has been actually started in the US basically. So there is not a narcissistic commune or anything that sort, but everybody behave as a narcissist, but they don't actually kill each other. I mean, go to, I mean, goody goody narcissist people. So when you are trying to say, how do you got any kind of experiences on that, or what do you mean by the word narcissism?
Well, narcissism is a spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe we all, like you said, we all have elements of narcissism within us. We live in a very narcissistic society. It is a matter when the narcissism overpowers the individual and they lead by it. So there's
Mm-hmm.
this false sense of self that
Mm-hmm.
they are leading with, that version of them, and it becomes severely abusive
Mm-hmm.
because there is a really difficult aspect to have relationships with these people of any kind, romantic,
Mm-hmm.
platonic,
Mm-hmm.
because they are never wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They really struggle to be self-reflective,
Mm-hmm.
and the gaslighting aspects are very damaging to
Mm-hmm.
someone that has had to experience that for many, many, many years, which is often the case.
Mm-hmm.
So it is not always obvious when you are dealing with a narcissist because of the fact that it is a spectrum. So it is
Mm-hmm.
understanding the tactics, the techniques, and how to really help yourself because a lot of people want to change the narcissist,
Mm-hmm.
and that is not what I recommend anyone do. The only way we can create change in our own lives is to change ourselves or change our environments and situations.
Mm-hmm. 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 What was the experience like, for example, any kind of Marxist people, those who came to you, and what happened? Is there anything that sort of the thing which has happened in your career?
It will vary. Some people will have experiences with a covert narcissist where they've been
Mm-hmm.
manipulated their entire
Mm-hmm.
lives.
Mm-hmm.
Other people will have experiences with the more overt narcissist where
Mm-hmm.
the experiences were very volatile, abusive, physically, emotionally. It will really depend.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of cases, people are experiencing a great deal of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but also, the biggest thing they have is hope.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of why people stay in relationships with such people is the hope that they will be better, do better,
Mm-hmm.
especially because they know the fact that they can. A narcissist
Mm-hmm.
is not all bad. It
Mm-hmm.
is, for the most part, I will say. And when you see those good sides to them and those good aspects, you hold out for hope that that side of them will return and that it will all be better. So, what people tend to do is they want to improve themselves and make the narcissist happy and appease them to bring that great version of them forward. And I don't feel in any aspect it is easy for anybody to see this. This is kind of a slow drip method over time where you might awaken to the fact you are in fact in a relationship with a narcissist,
Mm-hmm.
especially again going back to the fact that it's a spectrum. They're not going to necessarily show all aspects of being a narcissist right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm. So, is there any experiences which got in your career, any particular client that came to you and that they have got a very pretty healing and anything that sort which they have shared with you. Like, for example, there are a narcissist can be very different way. Like, there might be a feminist narcissist. Like, because of this particular ideology, or communist narcissist, because of this particular ideology which they are got attached to. Or, for example, there is also a civilized narcissist. Like, the civilization can take them to a topmost edge of the violence, basically, because they try to stick with that particular stuff for a long time. And um, and so these kind of thing, is there anything has happened to you, like, any kind of people, those who came to you, and where you were able to heal them in a particular certain way, and you were able to identify what is actually happened with them? Is there anything, that sort of story, which you would love to share, actually?
Well, most clients are coming to me initially for
Mm-hmm.
answers. They want to
Mm-hmm.
know what to do. And I
Mm-hmm.
really believe that's not my job in the sense of telling them what to do.
Mm-hmm.
My job is to give them back their power and help them
Mm-hmm.
find that and help them connect to it. Because
Mm-hmm.
I am not going to be present for every interaction with the
Mm-hmm.
narcissist. So, what I help them do is I
Mm-hmm.
help them strengthen the chakras that have been weakened. I
Mm-hmm.
help them strengthen themselves from an emotional standpoint, help them understand what has happened, help them regulate their nervous system, and give them the exercises to repair this. So,
So
in
the
giving a
thing is, like, shall I pursue that? I would love to. I mean, if what would be the result of? Is there something has happened, like more empowered narcissist behavior after it? I mean,
well, yeah, and that's a really good question. That's why it's not a prescription, it's not like here, do this and that's what's going to work. It really is going to depend because in some cases, if someone's in a relationship with
Mhm,
an overt narcissist, uh, and they're instructed to set boundaries,
mhm,
that
mhm,
narcissist might flip out on them and become extremely violent. So a lot
mhm,
of people will push, oh, you have to set boundaries, you have to do that. And while I agree it is important to set boundaries, you really have to know who you're dealing with and who you're in a relationship with
mhm,
because I do also work with people that have dealt with domestic violence, and
mhm,
setting boundaries in those situations are very dangerous. So I do believe it is very important to understand what that individual is going through. That's why I don't like to be basic, and there is no standard to that. It is very much who you're dealing with.
mhm,
I had one woman specifically who was dealing with domestic violence, and she was
mhm,
incredibly frightened and didn't know what to do, but she was desperate to leave.
mhm,
So in those situations, I definitely connect those type of people with people that specialize in domestic violence. We have domestic violence hotlines to
mhm,
get them into an environment where they're going to feel safe before
mhm,
even thinking about things like setting boundaries, especially if they
mhm,
have children involved.
mhm, mhm. So is what the result never been a more empowered narcissist, actually, or more lighter narcissist after the treatment? I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen a narcissist change as far as get better, but they do often get worse.
Mhm,
And it, yeah, I think if anyone is coming to me on help with their relationship,
mhm,
it, I'm always very clear that if the relationship is going to change for the way they want it,
mhm,
they're really going to have to be very understanding toward the fact that they're not going to get a narcissist to change.
mhm,
They don't, in that not in the sense of getting better, unless they're willing to look at themselves. And I have yet to have that experience for a narcissist to be able to say that they're a problem.
mhm. So there are cases which their behaviors are become more lighter. That's what you mean.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's it just, their behaviors own them
Mm-hmm.
and become so much a part of them, and they tend to lack the
Mm-hmm.
understanding of true love and
Mm-hmm.
compassion and what that really means at the core. They think they love, but a narcissist version of love is incredibly different than what many
Mm-hmm.
of us recognize as true love.
Mm-hmm.
because love is unconditional and narcissists are all about making conditions.
Mm-hmm. Mm. How do you feel about me? Am I a narcissist or?
Do I think you're a narcissist?
Yeah.
I believe, like anyone, you will have narcissistic tendencies. I can't say I've climbed into your energy that deep, though, to really see, are you a narcissist? So it would be, a different kind of read. But it's not always easy to recognize a narcissist right out of the gate because narcissists
Mm-hmm.
become really good at putting on a mask.
Mm-hmm.
So it has made me by nature a rather skeptical person, even as an energy reader. But I always
Mm.
trust vibes.
Yeah, you can test my vibes and how do you feel about that?
How do I feel about you?
Yeah.
Uh, all right. Well, I can tell you, you already have a block. So I can't get past your heart chakra and your solar
Mhm,
plexus chakra, which tells me that you've had to be very protective of yourself in this lifetime.
mhm. In what way?
And it's hard to say. I would say your experiences in life with people and life in general.
Mhm,
Life hasn't always been easy for you. And but you're not one to play victim. So I don't feel victim mentality, but I do feel a protective guard with also this want and willingness to be open. So you're good about connecting to people.
mhm,
And at the same time, that guard still stays up.
mhm.
So it's a matter of if you ever want to fully let that down. And I don't think you're very willing to in general.
In what way or what kind of energy vibration give you a hint that maybe I would be blocking myself or what made you to think in that particular way?
So, well, you asked me for a read, which made you open, and then I
Mhm,
connect, my chakras will feel your chakras. So I
mhm,
all of a sudden got hit in my heart and my solar plexus, especially my solar plexus, like
mhm,
hard. So I
mhm,
knew something was up there. And so when I tried to get past, it wouldn't
mhm,
let me. So that means there's a block there.
mhm,
And the block could sometimes be our own blocks, and in other ways, like because that's like a guard, a shield we put up. And in
mhm,
other times, the block is there because it built up over time due to other people. And sometimes it's kind of almost this fine line between that. It could
mhm,
almost be the same thing. It will really vary by person.
mhm, mhm. Mm. So in that case, what sort of exercises which you will actually tell me to do, basically?
Well, one thing I would want to do with you, the spoken word, like for example,
Mm-hmm,
like talk therapy, I
mm-hmm,
don't feel that would be
mm-hmm,
something that would work well for you.
mm-hmm,
It might for a period of time, but then
mm-hmm,
you'd hit this place of being like, okay, now
mm-hmm,
what? And not quite feeling you've reached this point of healing. I'll just use
mm-hmm,
that word for
mm-hmm,
all intents and purposes in the way that you would have wanted. So for
mm-hmm,
you, I
mm-hmm,
would really want to draw out what's
mm-hmm,
going on in your solar plexus because that's
mm-hmm,
not something that's very obvious. It's quite hidden.
mm-hmm,
So I would have you start writing because journaling
mm-hmm,
is brings out energetically
mm-hmm,
something that is often hidden.
mm-hmm,
And in some cases, it won't be obvious. So, like, let's just say I asked you to start journaling about something that hurt you or something that you feel is hidden.
mm-hmm,
It whatever you write may not be so obvious right out of the gate of
mm-hmm,
what maybe that connects to. I would feel into the energy of that,
mm-hmm,
right? So or I'd ask you to climb into that more because sometimes our bottom beliefs are so buried, we don't even know them ourselves. But here
mm-hmm,
we are subconsciously acting on them because
mm-hmm,
it's so ingrained in us. But that
mm-hmm,
would be how I would start with you is journaling and
mm-hmm,
really like climbing in there. I would also do a guided meditation for you and to like help you walk into that and try
mm-hmm,
and find it. because
Mm-hmm.
some people have the ability to climb into their own chakras and find some
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
Others don't because they don't feel they're very visual. So
Mm-hmm.
that would vary. I feel you have that ability to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So in the guided meditation thing, what all are the things which you will actually, how do you got into the guided meditation and how effective this will be?
Well, it depends on the person. In some cases, they can go in one guided meditation and find
Mm-hmm.
something and try and clear that up. And
Mm-hmm.
in other cases, they might find something and be shocked by what's there.
Mm-hmm.
Like they might be like, "Oh my gosh, why is my sister in here? I thought this all related to my father," you know? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so then it's sitting with that further. So they may go in and just find something shocking like that and have to
Mm-hmm.
really uh, unpack that.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's a deeper wound, it just takes more time,
Mm-hmm.
especially if that wound had been reinforced over many years
Mm-hmm.
through
Mm-hmm.
patterns. These are,
Mm-hmm.
especially because I deal with narcissism. Narcissism is all about patterns of behavior and cycles. So when
Mm-hmm.
that cycle keeps going round and round, it makes this wound very deep. So,
Mm-hmm.
and it really is up to the individual too, because
Mm-hmm.
I'll give people exercises and say, okay, now start working on these exercises. We'll check in next month.
Mm-hmm.
And I have clients that will do their exercises religiously and they will
Mm-hmm.
shift their energy incredibly. And then
Mm-hmm.
I have other clients who will not, and they will not have as big of an energetic shift. So really,
Mm-hmm.
it's always up to the individual and what they're willing to do. We're very programmed in a society for quick fixes,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes these can be quick fixes, but a lot of times it's not.
Mm-hmm. 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 Um, and so this is a kind of journey therapy per se.
It's definitely individual, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
It's a journey therapy. That's what you're doing. You know the
I,
term what is called a journey therapy?
I'm not sure I'm understanding.
I'm trying to say the journey therapy is a sort of therapy.
Gene therapy?
Journey.
Journey. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
I'm sorry, my English is a little bit bad actually. Like
no,
I'm.
it's more it's my lack of understanding. And this is how we learn and grow. So please don't be
Mhm.
sorry. I apologize as well, but we're here. We're good. Yeah, I guess in a way. I mean, I have had people ask me if I do shaman work, and I've never
Mhm.
studied shamanism to the degree to be able to feel comfortable calling myself a shaman. So yes, in a way, it would be kind of like journey work.
Mhm.
But very lately, because I feel that in those cases, I would say go to a shaman.
Mhm.
Connect with a
Mhm.
shaman. Because people have different opinions on shamanism as well. Some people believe it has to be, in the family lineage, and
Mhm.
others believe otherwise.
Mhm.
So I believe we are called to who we're meant to connect with.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I don't necessarily put a lot of labels on the things I do because a lot of
Mhm.
what I do is how I'm guided.
Mhm.
I will just sit with somebody and then I might hear something, I might feel something,
Mhm.
so I feel that's kind of how my mediumship comes into my work because I'm serving as a medium. I'm delivering
Mhm.
messages to a client of here's how I'm being guided
Mhm.
on how your journey can heal with these steps.
Mhm.
Um, so I just trust spirit.
Mhm. Mhm. What was that? I didn't hear you the last word. What was that?
I said, I just trust spirit. I
Trust
trust
spirit.
I'm guided.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just
Mm-hmm.
trust
Mm-hmm.
that guidance. It's call it my inner voice.
Mm-hmm. So when did all these things are started? When did you started working on the mediumship or journey therapy or
I started doing this like for work
mm-hmm.
officially, gosh, like 5 years ago now. But I was doing it, I guess, in my personal life so much that
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it pushed me into doing it
Mm-hmm.
professionally. I never
Mm-hmm.
thought I'd be doing this professionally. I didn't think, if you would have told me this was going to be my life, I would have laughed because
Mm-hmm.
I have a business background. I had a very different past
Mm-hmm.
than my
Mm-hmm.
present because I started just by helping kids. I
Mm-hmm.
helped kids be understood by their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot of parents come to me saying how I helped their relationship with their children. And
Mm-hmm.
they would just refer me to other people, and I would just continue to help in that way. And
So you
eventually,
basically mostly work with the children's.
yeah, I started with children.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You
I
I
don't
mean
work
what?
with children as much now as I did then because it was all children then. And now I would
Mm-hmm.
say,
All the
yeah, I
children's
mostly
become
see
adult,
adults.
adult children's now.
Yeah, no, children are amazing. Children are just incredible. And especially because I work with
No, I
old
mean
souls,
now adult kids,
you,
adult
you,
children's now. I mean,
you do not like children?
no, adult children's,
I'm not following, sorry.
children's those who are grown up.
Oh, adult children. That's a good way. Okay. Yeah, yeah, that's a really good way to put that too, because if you think about it, so many of us are adult children
Mhm,
because our growth has been stifled. At
mhm,
least in my experiences, children, I think, are much more tuned in to what's going on,
mhm.
but they just don't always have the words to explain and express that.
So, what is your background? Which are you from a university or anything that sort like?
Yeah, I have a bachelor's degree in business,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked in business. I was in New York for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from that area, so I'm very comfortable there.
Mm-hmm.
And I, like I said, was doing very different things than I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
My motivation then was about making money,
Mm-hmm.
but not for the reason most people would assume. Really, my independence was so important to me. I never wanted to have to rely on anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And that really came from a fear of just not feeling safe.
Mm-hmm. 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 Like, what do you mean by that? Like, not wanting to rely on somebody can come from fear of not feeling safe.
My parents were very controlling with
Mm-hmm.
money
Mm-hmm.
and very threatening, and I lived a very volatile life. And I was very set on never needing to need money from another person
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because conditions came with that, and those conditions were often incredibly controlling, and I didn't want to be controlled. So I guess really it was the wanting to be free and to feel free. So, financial freedom for me meant independence, meant safety, meant not having to rely on my parents because, they were the type to
Mm-hmm.
give, but then have many expectations in return beyond what I would consider uh, a standard for most parents. I think a lot of parents will provide for their children and expect them to be and turn out a certain way. My parents, on the other hand, were quite different in that and very controlling.
It's most of the cases it is like that, right? I mean, in
In
my case,
narcissism, it is.
it is like that. I mean, the parents are like that.
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases it is. But
Mm-hmm.
when there is a line of abuse,
Mm-hmm.
and in my case it was physical abuse,
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's something like I think this is a problem which generations of humanity is facing now. I mean, parents can abuse their kids in both physically and mentally. That can be become a trauma.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's starting to shift though.
See, the thing is like the Kafka's this one philosopher Kafka. He wrote a book about the traveling salesman, and it's about his father. I think more and more people are reading that particular novel right now, more than that of any time in the history. It's all about the abusive relatives and the abusive relationships which they have got in the journey, basically, that particular book. So
Yeah, I mean,
How do you reflect on that? Like,
Well, like I said, I believe a lot of
I
it's
mean,
shifting.
you have an idea about who is Kafka, right? I mean,
I'm not familiar with that work, but yeah, I agree with what you're saying, just as far as,
okay, the if you don't and if you are not like this is a book. I mean, I'll just tell you this particular story of this particular book. This book, in this particular book, the the guy who is the main character in this particular book, he is a traveling salesman, and one fine day he woke up on the bed and seeing himself as a bug. Basically, he turned out as a bug, a giant bug. So the first thing he was thinking, like, how do I go to work today, because my manager is going to come. And when he's trying to go out from the room, his parents and relatives are started to freak out, and they locked him inside this particular room. And if we see this particular storyline, you know, their parents and their relatives are greatly depends on this particular traveling salesman and his income. Because of that, his family was uh, um, going on this particular guy's income. And what happened is that once he turned out as a bug, they are not anymore depends on him, and they started to throw trashes, and they started to throw rotten food to him. And finally he die out of this particular traveling salesman die out of hunger, basically. So this is the story of metamorphosis. This is the story name of the particular novel. So this guy, the philosopher Kafka, he did a greater deal of putting this particular kind of mentality. How a person who is greatly abusive will feel in his life. And basically the all these kind of relationships are not going to make any sense at the end, until at last they are truly figuring out their purposes, basically. So how do you feel about this? This is a greater deal of narcissism.
I think it can. I mean, if you think about that, that's conditioning, right?
Mhm,
And narcissism is a form of conditioning. It
mhm,
is also a generational pattern of abuse,
mhm,
and it is always individual. It is, kind of, yeah, it's incredibly controlling. And again, going back to it being a spectrum, there's such a variance in people's experiences
mhm,
and how that will work. And I don't believe that every parent that is trying to control their child
mhm,
is going to be a narcissist. In some cases, it can just really be fear-based. They want to protect their children.
mhm, mhm,
And so I really believe really getting to the crux of that helps a
mhm,
lot of people understand, like, where is this coming from? I mean, even I've done that,
mhm,
I was hit quite a lot growing up
mhm,
beyond the traditional spanking.
mhm,
And I didn't know that wasn't normal. I
mhm,
would share stories with friends
mhm,
and they would just look at me like, Chris, that's not okay.
mhm,
And
mhm,
I had one person who was a friend of mine said, the next time that happens, you should call the police.
mhm, mhm,
And I did, and that backfired completely. The police took me
mhm,
instead, and they
mhm,
dropped me off at a local train station
mhm, mhm.
and said, figure it out. So,
Figure it
uh,
out what?
figure out what you're going to do.
Mhm, mhm,
They had no proof,
mhm,
and my parents said, just take her, get rid of her.
mhm,
And they did. And
mhm,
I called my grandmother,
mhm,
who picked me up and drove me right back to my parents' house
mhm,
and said, you got to deal with this. So I had no help.
mhm,
I It was a very difficult um, life in a lot of ways, but I also, again, understand. why I had to experience all that, because that's probably why everything shifted for me
Mm-hmm.
into the spiritual aspect. It's really getting out of the victim mentality. I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
victim,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to be in that. It's very low vibration for one, but it's really recognizing, why did we need to experience the things we need to experience?
Mm-hmm.
Why did our soul choose these lessons? Why are we here to experience these things? And I think when we can look at it from that perspective, it helps us change our story.
Mm-hmm. 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 So you want to help other peoples, those who are getting abused by their peers or parents or anything that sort. That's what you are trying to do now.
Yes, that is. I do my best in that regard. And
Mm-hmm.
if anything, I feel I help people not feel so alone.
Mm-hmm.
Being in any kind of narcissistic relationship is very isolating and very lonely.
Mm-hmm.
And you can feel a lot of darkness in
Mm-hmm.
such situations. I had many years of wishing I was not on this planet. My parents made me feel like a terrible person, and like life for them would have been much better had I not been born. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt that way until I left their house. And then I
Like
realized
the traveling salesman turned out as a giant living bug, basically.
I was the giant living bug in that
Mm-hmm.
household. And I
Mm-hmm.
was told regularly how
Mm-hmm.
difficult I made their lives, how hard I was, what a problem I was. And it was constant. And I hated myself. I absolutely hated myself. I thought I was a terrible person. I actually, at one point, had I had had a very bad accident.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember crying so hard that I survived it, because I
Mm-hmm.
felt like my parents' lives would have been better. My family's life would have been better if I didn't survive it. I didn't get to the point of being suicidal,
Mm-hmm.
but I certainly thought of death a lot and wished I was no longer here
Mm-hmm.
because of how badly they made me feel. And I recognized, as I got older and I understood narcissism more, it is extremely common for
Mm-hmm.
people raised by narcissists or in a situation with a
Mm-hmm.
narcissist to feel like they shouldn't be here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really sad. So if I help people understand that they do belong here and they are serving a purpose, then
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've done my job to a degree.
Mm-hmm. 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 So, is there any messages you want to give to the people?
I think one message I
Like
like for people,
I would love to talk. Like we have spoken about the Kafka's story. Like how many of these people, how many people can relate this story to themselves? What do you think about this?
I believe it's how they feel they identify with, well, with any story, really, if you think about
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And can you shift yourself out of victim mode?
Mm-hmm.
Because and that is not to suggest that no one should play victim.
Mm-hmm.
Have your moment being a victim, because you
Mm-hmm.
certainly are when you're in
Mm-hmm.
any situation like that story.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and, feel it,
Mm-hmm.
mourn it,
Mm-hmm.
experience it, get that emotion, have that come out, however, but shift that.
Mm-hmm.
Learn to shift that, go from victim to survivor,
Mm-hmm.
and see how your life changes when you're able to do that. And also recognize that it takes time. It's little steps. That type of behavior, that type of story, it didn't happen in a day. It didn't
Mm-hmm.
happen overnight. That's years.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so healing is going to take time. And then it's knowing you're worth that time. You are worth that healing journey.
Mm-hmm. 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 So, you have started this is a while ago, like maybe 5 years, I say. Yes.
About,
Hmm?
yeah.
Or
Yeah.
6?
Yeah, I guess I'm like, how old is my website? Because that's when I became more official, and that's like
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5 years now. But yeah, I guess for a while I shied away from it. I
Mm-hmm.
I I don't know if I felt worthy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that was some healing too. And, I think, like I said, we're always brought to the people we're meant to connect
Mhm,
with. And
mhm,
when people connect with me, I know there's a reason. It's not
mhm,
always obvious,
mhm,
but
mhm,
like I said, I just trust the process and try to just
mhm,
roll with it.
mhm. So basically, how many people you could have helped in this particular years of therapy?
How many people have I helped?
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good question. I've never really thought of that. I'll just leave that at many.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that stand out most are the children
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
and parents
what is it?
and their parents.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How many, can you put it a number like maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, 200, 500, a billion? No.
No, I mean, in the beginning, when I was first doing it with just kids, I say at that time before I was ever doing this professionally, maybe like 20 to 30 kids.
Mhm,
Uh, and since then, I'd say around 60, 70,
mhm,
more than that at
mhm,
this point.
mhm,
But like I said, I don't work with as many kids now. I'll work with a lot of parents and then they'll want me to meet their kids.
mhm,
But I don't do as much. Uh, it's not always easy too,
mhm,
because in a lot of cases, the parents can take it very personally. And
mhm,
I try really hard not to make a parent feel bad about themselves. I think, especially if a parent has found me and is asking me to help them with their child, they have really good intentions. They are not bad people.
mhm,
But if they have narcissistic tendencies and do not recognize how they're parenting with that,
mhm,
uh, and I bring that to light, that could be a little tough of a pill to swallow.
mhm,
Uh, so, but I also have to be careful too, because in some cases, I usually work with women.
mhm, mhm,
And if the father in the situation or their husband is the
mhm,
narcissist,
mhm,
uh, that could be a little tricky
mhm, mhm,
as
mhm,
they have a child or yeah, it's always interesting. I'll just say that.
mhm, mhm. Mm. So in some particular situation, Fath, mostly, how do you see this relationship? A son to father relationship, son to mother relationship, or a daughter to father relationship, daughter to son relationship? Which one is more abusive and why?
Which one's more abusive?
Where do you find more of the
I
problems? I mean, we are trying to look into this in a problem way because you are a therapist, actually. I mean.
I am not. I'm not. But okay. So that is a very tricky question if you think
Mhm,
about that, because you really have to look at what is the generational pattern. So if you have a generational pattern where the man is in charge and the man is a man's man and has to live life a certain way, they tend to be very hard on their sons.
mhm, mhm,
So in those environments, the father
mhm,
to son relationship is more toxic.
mhm,
If you have in other situations
mhm,
where a mother feels threatened by their daughters,
mhm,
that's where
mhm,
those relationships are very toxic.
mhm,
Uh,
mhm,
so I do find the similar genders, so father to
mhm,
son, mother
mhm,
to daughter, are more consistently the
mhm,
toxic ones.
mhm,
That doesn't mean that can't vary.
mhm,
Uh, I
mhm,
mean, I had two narcissistic parents.
mhm,
So,
mhm,
and it was very different. I had
mhm,
very different relationship with my father. He was very physically abusive. My mother was too, but my father was scary
mhm,
to me, and really, gosh, it hurt.
mhm, mhm,
When they say you don't remember pain, I don't quite agree with that. But it really, again, depends
mhm,
on how they were raised and
mhm,
how that cycle has continued and evolved, because now we're at a case where I feel a lot more people are aware and
mhm,
they don't want to push forward those patterns of the past.
mhm,
But a
mhm,
lot of them, what happens is they have tunnel vision.
mhm,
So they won't maybe recycle one particular pattern and not realize all the other patterns they're recycling, because they're,
mhm,
again, that tunnel vision comes in.
mhm,
That's what
mhm,
abuse does. That's what trauma does. It
What is
creates a
this?
heightened
What is
focus.
that tunnel vision?
Tunnel vision, like when you're hyper focused on one thing. So, like for
Mm-hmm.
me, for example,
Mm-hmm.
I swore I would not hit my children because I was
Mm-hmm.
hit so much
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't feel it served me
Mm-hmm.
at all.
Mm-hmm.
It just made me very scared and it made
Mm-hmm.
me very angry.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I did not want to do that to my own children, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't realize some of the other things I
Mm-hmm.
was carrying forward. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that like words coming out of my mouth where I felt like I sounded like one of my parents. And I was like, oh
Mm-hmm.
gosh, I can't believe that. Again, that's tunnel vision. You're so focused on one aspect, you kind of have these blinders on.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm. So you are feeling this particular pattern is actually coming down. This is what you're trying to say.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what kind of data is actually supporting your observation, basically?
I'm sure there's data out there. I can't quote any in particular. I, that's just my own experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't say I've even tallied it in my own work.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I And it again, it also really varies. There's always a variance. It's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
I feel a really good book is the Birth Order book
Mm-hmm.
that was written by someone that does have a background in psychology and how we are brought up
Mm-hmm.
and parented based on our birth order. And
Mm-hmm.
but the book itself, there's variances,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like I'll just use myself as an example because it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a middle child, but
Mm-hmm.
I also fit into the variance of being a functional first
Mm-hmm.
because there is more than 5 years between me and my older sibling.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I also am my father's first biological child. So
Mm-hmm.
again, that's a variance.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, my brother
Mm-hmm.
is the baby of the family, but is
Mm-hmm.
also the firstborn male. So
Mm-hmm.
there's variance of he's a functional first as well as a baby.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like that, you don't always fit into a box. You can
Mm-hmm.
kind of fit into a box, but you're
Mm-hmm.
also your foot in another one. So it
Mm-hmm.
works much like that. And I feel that uh, I was very drawn to that book because I see a lot of that in my own work of how
Mm-hmm.
someone behaves, of how
Mm-hmm.
someone parents. It
Mm-hmm.
very much will relate to their birth order and the variances
Mm-hmm.
within that.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any pedagogical approach? Pedagogy, I mean, any kind of structured approach to the person who is coming to any kind of therapy to you?
Sorry, could you elaborate on that question? Because I don't feel I fully understood that.
Like there is a pedagogy in any kind of curriculum, like like you are going to middle school, you are going to the secondary school, you are going to the, like that there is a pedagogy. This is the thing you have to learn, this is the thing you have to learn. So when it comes to the therapy, there can be intuitive also, there can be pedagogical also, like there is more structured or scientific way to analyze the person who is coming to, or there is more of intuitive sense, like a shaman who is more or less of an intuitive person, like what happens, he see the reality and reflect himself or herself into that particular reality which is happening around them. That could be by from the indication from the nature around them, or maybe a spiritual existence or spiritual self which is existing, that is giving messages to this particular medium or the shaman or that is something that sort. So I am just trying to say that whether you are following any sort of pedagogical approach where there is a structured way, these are the process, or this is something like which is coming intuitively and
Yeah, for me, there definitely is no structure. It's
Mhm, mhm,
100% intuitive,
mhm,
and maybe I wouldn't say 100%. I'll leave a small room for
mhm,
just my ability to sense and read people, because our intuition can vary, right?
mhm,
If some cases, if someone's putting up a block, I'm not going to be able to read them fully,
mhm, mhm,
and that means I'm not meant to.
Mm-hmm.
You don't break through somebody's energetic walls like you wouldn't push through their own door. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't believe structure is for me. Although
Mm-hmm.
I like it to
Mm-hmm.
a degree, but I identify as an old soul. We don't do well with structure. We
Mm-hmm.
kind of find our own way.
Mm-hmm. 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 Is there anywhere it is gone wrong? It's went wrong. It given any wrong output which you are never expecting?
I I haven't had a negative experience with a
Mm-hmm.
client,
Mm-hmm.
so I'd like to say no.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody has had a bad experience with me and hasn't shared that, then that's certainly something I wouldn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And if that were to happen, I'll just say it. Hopefully, it puts me in a place to be self-reflective and allow me to look at how I could do better and be better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So anything else you want to share or you want to talk about?
I don't think so. I feel we covered quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. So how do people can reach out to you if anybody want to reach out to you, what they can do?
They can find me on my website. It's my
Mm-hmm.
name, chriswasco.com.
Mm-hmm. How many years old it is? 5 years, you say.
How many years old is my website?
Mm-hmm.
About 4 or 5 years now. I'd have to
Mm-hmm.
double.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So is there any story behind the painting which I can see behind you?
Is there any what?
Any story related to the painting which I can see behind of you? I mean,
Oh,
that was very nice actually. I mean,
it's yeah, the mountains.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like feng shui and I do a lot of feng shui
Mm-hmm.
and mountains are very powerful to have
Mm-hmm.
behind you when you're working.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Have you
For a
been
lot,
in a mountain sometime? Like, I've been into a lot of mountains which is in India. Like, I mean, your way of seeing will actually change a lot. Like, you can see more things which you will be otherwise ignoring. Yeah, this is a very good way to say, like, energizing your own self with the things. Yeah.
yeah,
How? Mhm,
I love mountains for a lot of
mhm,
reasons.
mhm,
I mean, you, I'm sure, have had amazing experiences with
mhm,
mountains.
mhm,
I can't say I've gone beyond the Rocky Mountains,
mhm,
so,
mhm,
but yeah, I don't know. I guess for me, I'm more drawn to the beach.
mhm, mhm,
I heal really well with water.
mhm,
I'm a water sign, so I
mhm,
think I very much connect to it.
mhm,
And mountains I find inspiring when you are going through something difficult. So
mhm,
I think that's more of my inspiration. There's a lot of power
mhm,
in mountains and what it could do for you.
mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, I think, yeah, anything else? What would you say to all the abusive kids out there?
What would I say to what?
The kids, those go Tarma actually.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
The kids, the younger kids, those who got abused, those kids, those who are
Those
living.
kids.
Yeah, do
Oh,
you have something to say to them? Don't be abusive.
I say it gets better.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it just is hard for a while,
Mm-hmm.
but it does get better, and you do have the power. You just can't see it yet,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and you'll get there. Just you just have to have that willingness to. It's I don't believe anyone deserves it.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe we choose it for a reason, though, and yeah, it's a big part of our journey. And
Mm-hmm.
if anything, it can make us more compassionate as individuals because it could go one way or the other. You can become that, which
Mm-hmm.
many people do. People that are abusers were once abused. That is
Mm-hmm.
a common
Mm-hmm.
aspect to anyone. But why not use it to be more compassionate and make yourself a better human being? So that's one thing I hope that a lot of people will hold on to, even if it's a seed to
Mm-hmm.
plant
Mm-hmm.
of try to shift that towards compassion because it'll make your life a lot better in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for giving time. Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Mhm.